Emmanuel Fernandez rises from the shadows to become a sudden hero, while Neil McCann explodes over a penalty that never was. Thelo Aasgaard dragged off at the break after touching the ball fewer times than the goalkeeper, and now his place is hanging by a thread. Danny Roll calls it a dirty win, but makes it 4 on the bounce, and the pressure builds ahead of Braga. And just when you thought it couldn't get any spicier, club captain James Tavernier is considering his Rangers' future, with fresh contract talks and outside interest heating up. Could this be his final season in Glasgow? What matters is we got the win yesterday, didn't we? Go on, hit that like button. Today's video is a belter. You know how you sometimes see a moment on the telly and just go, "Aye, that lad's got something about him." Well, that was exactly the reaction after Emmanuel Fernandez planted an absolute thumping header into the net at Ibrox against Livingston. Neil McCann, who knows a thing or two about pulling on the Rangers jersey, couldn't hide his admiration on Sports Scene, calling it a monster of a goal, and he's spot on. Fernandez climbed like he had springs in his boots and powered that ball in as if he was settling a debt with it. Rangers edged it 2-1 in the end, with Diamanda grabbing the winner after a tight offside call that, let's be honest, would have had the Celtic media outlets frothing if it went the other way. But a win's a win, even if the Ibrox crowd weren't too shy about showing their displeasure at half-time, and rightly so. That first half performance was flatter than a warm pint in the Gallowgate. Thelo Aasgaard, let's not sugarcoat it, hooked at half-time and barely left a footprint on the pitch. But out of all that, up steps Fernandez, a lad who's had to bide his time since arriving from Peterborough for around £3.5 million. Injuries gave him the shot, but he didn't just take it, he booted the door in and made himself heard. 8 clearances, 2 interceptions, and a goal. He was everywhere. Even the delivery from Tavernier was on a plate, not the usual whipped ball, but a wee dink into the danger zone. And Fernandez made sure it was treated like a gift from the heavens. And now, with Braga on the horizon in the Europa League, you've got to wonder, does Danny Roll throw the big man into the deep end in Europe? Because on that performance, he didn't just show he can handle Livingston, he showed he's ready for more. Should Fernandez now be starting ahead of Sutar or Cornelius even when they're fit? Or would that be throwing too much faith in a lad who's only just broken through? Despite walking away with a 2-1 win over Livingston, it wasn't the final scoreline that had everyone talking. It was the moment that didn't result in a penalty, and Neil McCann made sure it wasn't swept under the rug. Emmanuel Fernandez, the same lad who scored a monster of a header earlier in the match, found himself right in the middle of a storm when Tete Yengi's shot smacked off his arm in the box. Now, let's be honest here. You've seen them given. You've also seen them waved away. But when Neil McCann, who bleeds Rangers blue, is standing on BBC Sports Scene saying Rangers got out of jail, or you know it was a big call, he pointed out that Fernandez wasn't tucking his arms in. The ball was on target, and that motion of the hand lifting, it all looked suspicious. Livingston boss David Martindale was raging after full time, and you can't blame him for wanting a word with Willie Collum about what VAR was doing or not doing during the incident. According to McCann, this wasn't about fancy camera angles or confusing rules. It was basic stuff. Ball to hand, arm not tucked in, no pen, and yet play on. But here's the thing. How many times have you watched Rangers not get those decisions? How many times have you seen decisions go the other way, costing points, cups, momentum? The semi-final against Celtic springs to mind. Aasgaard sent off for a 50-50, Trusty staying on after booting Jack Butland. That was a scandal that's still got a bitter taste. So if fortune's finally balancing out, you take it with open arms and a smirk. That said, this Fernandez moment has put a wee asterisk on the win for some folk, but not for you, not if you know what this team's been through this season. The 3 points are in the bag, the title chase continues, and Rangers march on. Right, here's where it gets awkward. Thelo Aasgaard. You were hoping for a bounce back after that League Cup disaster, weren't you? Fresh off international duty where Norway absolutely battered Italy, the lad was given the keys to the number 10 role at Ibrox and then completely disappeared. 19 touches in 45 minutes. Let that sink in. Our keeper Jack Butland had more. So did Livy's striker Yengi. 1 dribble, no shots, and lost possession 4 times. The only real contribution was walking off the pitch to make way for Bojan Miovski, who then got involved in the winning goal. Now, Danny Roll did his best to defend the decision, called it tactical, said he needed a centre forward in the box, fair enough. But if you're Aasgaard and you've just come back from an historic night at the San Siro, this was meant to be your statement game. Instead, he looked like he'd been dropped into a bounce game with the under-18s. Roll described it as a dirty win, and he's right. We weren't good. Rangers stuttered, took the lead, and then sat off. Sloppy passing, lazy pressing, no real sharpness until the subs came on. But here's the thing. Under the last manager, you're probably not winning that. Under Roll, you find a way. But now there's a real question, because Nedim Bajrami, Lyle Cameron, even Miovski playing off a striker all look like better options at the moment than Aasgaard in that role. The numbers don't lie, and if you're getting subbed at half-time while your team is chasing the title, you're not trusted. Has Thelo Aasgaard already blown his chance to be a starter under Roll, or does he deserve one last shot before you call time on the experiment? And now we've reached the news that could shake the very foundations of Ibrox. James Tavernier, the captain, the talisman, the one constant through the chaos, is facing a huge decision about his Rangers' future. Talks are expected to take place ahead of the January window, and it sounds like it's finally time for him to decide whether he finishes his career in Govan or takes one last payday elsewhere. There was interest from Turkey and Saudi Arabia in the summer, but Tav chose to stay. He's been loyal, he's been ever present, and you can bet if he goes, it won't be without serious reflection. His current deal runs until the summer of 2026, which means he could walk away for nothing if no extension is agreed. And let's be honest, plenty of clubs across Europe would take him in a heartbeat. Now, Rangers were apparently open to offers in April, not because they didn't rate him, but because the coffers are tight. That £26 million spent in the summer under Russell Martin didn't come cheap, and it's restricted what Roll can do in January. The manager wants a striker, a midfielder, and a left-back, but he might have to sell before he can buy. Tavernier's future is now a key domino. If he signs on, he stays the heartbeat of the side, a leader, and someone who's dragged Rangers through the mud more times than folk care to count. If he leaves, it frees up wages and opens the door for a new era, but also risks ripping out the spine of a team still rebuilding under Roll. And let's be clear, his form's not fallen off a cliff. He's still contributing, still leading, but age catches up with everyone. And the club needs to decide, is sentiment getting in the way of progress, or does experience like his still win you titles? Would selling Tavernier in the summer be a betrayal of everything he's given to Rangers, or the bold move needed to push this team into a new chapter? Like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe for daily Rangers news.